Most women are doing everything right and still losing him. You're showing up, you're present, you're putting in the effort, and somehow he's just not as locked in as you'd hoped. He's warm, then distant, interested, then unavailable. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a question keeps surfacing. Why does commitment come so easily for some women and feel like pulling teeth for others? Here's what I want you to know. It's not about being more attractive, more agreeable, or playing harder to get. It goes much deeper than that. There are specific psychological dynamics rooted in how the male brain actually processes connection, loyalty, and desire that most women simply were never taught. Today, we're going into 7 of them. These aren't games. They're not manipulation tactics. They're truths about human psychology that, once you understand them, will change how you show up in every relationship. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to do and, more importantly, why it works. Welcome back to Lena, where we talk about the things most people think but never say out loud. If you're new here, subscribe. I post every week and I'd love to have you here. Now, let's get into it. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. We spend so much time asking, what does he want? And almost no time asking, what does the human brain actually need to feel committed? Because commitment isn't a decision someone makes with their head, it's something that happens in the body first. Neuroscience tells us that deep attachment is driven by a specific cocktail of neurochemicals, oxytocin, dopamine, and vasopressin, all of which are triggered not by grand gestures, but by very particular patterns of behavior and interaction. Research on attachment theory, originally developed by John Bowlby and expanded by researchers like Dr. Sue Johnson, shows that secure attachment, the kind that leads to long-term commitment, is built through specific emotional cues. Safety, responsiveness, a sense that this person sees you and chooses you. And here's what most dating advice completely misses. These cues aren't created by being perfect. They're created by being psychologically attuned. Understanding what triggers closeness in a man's mind and what quietly triggers avoidance, even when neither of you can name it. That's exactly what we're covering today. So let's break this down, starting with number 1. You've probably heard, don't be too available. But that's such a surface-level read of what's actually happening. Think about this. Have you ever been in a conversation that ended just before the best part? You couldn't stop thinking about it. You were pulled back. That's the Zeigarnik Effect, a psychological phenomenon showing that the brain fixates on incomplete experiences far more than completed ones. We are literally wired to pursue what feels unfinished. When you are completely available, completely predictable, completely knowable, his brain registers closure. And closure doesn't create longing. It creates comfort at best, stagnation at worst. This doesn't mean playing games or ignoring him. It means having a life that is genuinely full. Pursue things that interest you, have plans, have passions. When you create space naturally, not artificially, but because your life is rich, you become someone he wants to move toward, not someone he feels he already has. There's a difference between being emotionally available and being emotionally overextended. The first builds security. The second removes the pull. Keep that distinction clear. There's a pattern I see over and over. A woman is strong, capable, independent, all genuinely wonderful things. But in her relationship, she unintentionally signals that she doesn't need him. Not because she's cold, but because she's competent. And quietly, slowly, he disengages. Psychologist Dr. John Gottman's decades of relationship research point to something called positive sentiment override. The idea that men in committed relationships need to feel like they're making a positive difference in their partner's life. Not because they're fragile, but because the male brain is wired to seek what researchers call effectance, the drive to have meaningful impact. When a man feels he can genuinely add value to your life, not fix you, just contribute, it creates a dopamine loop. He associates being with you with feeling capable and purposeful. That association becomes magnetic over time. So the shift is subtle but powerful. Let him be useful. Not performatively, genuinely. Notice when he helps and name it. That actually helped me. Thank you. 4 words, wildly effective. Have you ever noticed that how you talk about yourself shapes how others experience you? When a woman consistently frames her story through difficulty, complaint, or emotional chaos, not because she's wrong, but because that's her habitual lens, the man in her life begins to associate her with a particular emotional weight. He loves her, but being around her feels heavy. This is where cognitive association theory comes in. Our brains form emotional anchors, link-ups between a person and a feeling. Over time, every interaction either reinforces a positive association or a negative one, and it happens largely below conscious awareness. Women who inspire deep commitment aren't women without problems. They're women who carry their challenges with a kind of grounded self-possession. They can be vulnerable without being destabilizing. They can share hard things without making the relationship feel like emotional triage. Ask yourself, what feeling does he consistently walk away with after time with you? Not every interaction has to be light, but the overall emotional climate of your relationship is something you actively create. Make it one he wants to live in. This sounds simple. It is not simple. Most couples fall into touch patterns without realizing it, defaulting to physical contact mainly in the context of sex and almost nowhere else. And when that happens, physical closeness becomes transactional, which actually reduces emotional intimacy over time rather than building it. Here's what the research shows. Touch, specifically non-sexual intentional physical contact, triggers the release of oxytocin, the bonding neurochemical. A study published in Psychological Science found that affectionate touch reduces stress hormones and significantly increases feelings of security and closeness between partners. It's one of the fastest ways to reinforce attachment. What this looks like in practice. A hand on his arm when you're talking about something that matters. A brief touch to the chest when you say goodbye. Your head on his shoulder, not because you want something, but because you want to be close. These micro moments of physical connection compound. They tell his nervous system, you are safe with her. You belong here. Intentional, non-transactional touch is one of the most underused tools in building deep bond. Use it with warmth and without agenda. There's a very specific thing that happens when a woman feels insecure in a relationship. She starts to make her case. She over-explains. She over-justifies. She works harder, gives more, and makes herself undeniably valuable, trying to prove something that should never have to be proven. Here's the psychological truth. People do not commit to what they're convinced of. They commit to what they feel. And the feeling of someone's value is communicated not by what they say about themselves, but by how they carry themselves. This is deeply rooted in behavioral psychology. We infer worth from behavior, from posture, from how someone treats themselves under pressure. When you make decisions from a place of self-respect, when you end conversations that diminish you, hold boundaries without anger, walk away from situations that don't serve you without needing to announce it, you signal value on a level that bypasses logic entirely. He feels it, even if he can't name it. Stop auditioning, start being. The woman who is deeply committed to herself is the woman who inspires commitment in others. Men are taught from an early age to manage their emotions privately, to appear strong, not to show what's actually going on inside. By the time most men enter relationships, they have years of practice at emotional containment. Not emotional absence containment. There's a difference, and it matters. When a man shows you something real, a fear, a doubt, a past wound, and you respond with warmth instead of judgment, with curiosity instead of advice, with presence instead of fixes, something shifts. His nervous system relaxes. He begins to associate you with safety, and that association, once formed, is extraordinarily powerful. Dr. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability consistently shows that emotional openness deepens connection in both partners. But it requires one person to create a container safe enough for it to happen. In many relationships, that person is the woman. Not because it's your job to carry the emotional weight, but because you often have the fluency to lead there first. When he says something vulnerable and you don't make it weird, don't weaponize it later, and don't minimize it, he will come back, again and again, because you gave him something rare, a place where he doesn't have to perform. Here's something attachment research shows consistently. Commitment isn't just about how good things feel right now. It's about how real the future feels. When two people have a shared vision, not matching Pinterest boards, but a genuine sense of, we're building something together, commitment becomes almost self-sustaining. Psychologist Robert Sternberg's triangular theory of love identifies commitment as one of three core pillars, alongside intimacy and passion. And while intimacy and passion fluctuate naturally over time, commitment is what stabilizes the structure. But it doesn't grow in a vacuum. It grows when two people are consciously constructing a shared narrative. This means talking about the future in concrete, positive terms, not as ultimatums, not as pressure, as genuine, excited orientation towards something bigger than today. I'd love to travel to Japan someday. Have you ever thought about that? What would your ideal next 5 years look like? These aren't tests, they're invitations to co-create. A man who sees his future with you doesn't just stay out of habit. He stays because leaving would feel like losing the life he's been imagining. That's the difference between being someone he's with and being someone he's building toward. If you've ever found yourself wondering what you're doing wrong, if you felt like you give everything and still somehow end up feeling unseen, I want you to hear this. You are not too much. You are not broken. You were just never taught how to do this. Most of us grew up learning about love through people who were also figuring it out, in a culture that confuses performance with depth and sacrifice with love. We were taught to be chosen. Nobody taught us how to create the conditions where the right person feels safe enough to choose deeply and stay. Everything we've talked about today, the space you hold, the safety you create, the grounded self-respect you carry, it all flows from one place. How you feel about yourself when no one is watching. That is the foundation. Not the techniques, not the psychology, you. When you invest in your own sense of worth, when you learn your own emotional patterns, when you stop outsourcing your value to whether or not he texts back, something changes. Not just in your relationships, in you. And the relationships that find you from that place, they're built differently. That's what all 7 of these points are really pointing to. Not how to catch him, how to become someone who doesn't need to catch anyone because the right ones show up and stay on their own. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Of the 7 things we talked about today, which one landed hardest for you? Was it creating space, emotional safety, embodying your worth? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely read them and I'd love to know. If this resonated with you, subscribe to Lena. I'm here every week exploring the psychology behind the things we feel but can rarely name. I'd love to have you in this community. And if you want to go even deeper, watch this next. It connects directly to something we touched on today, and I think it'll be the missing piece for a lot of you. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.